I think you just sort of deal with what life throws at you. And unfortunately, my father had a stroke when he was pretty young, and therefore I was, not super old either. And it struck our family pretty hard. But then my mother also had been ill, but it was sort of dormant. She had pulmonary fibrosis, and it's a terrible disease. It's when your lungs harden and you gradually suffocate to death. And when I say gradually, it can be very gradual. And so she became very ill when my father, needed a lot of help and just didn't understand anything. And so then when she passed away, it was really hard on me. And then I didn't want to write elegies because everyone else I felt like had done them better. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to do that. But one day I was listening to NPR and they were talking about that really cool documentary, Obit, which is all about obituary writers. And I don't know, just something clicked. And I have like an idea a minute, I just have that kind of brain that's constantly like turning and turning and very, I call it more of like an entrepreneurial brain. I recognize it when I see it. Like there are a lot of people who have this kind of brain. Always thinking of new ideas, not on purpose. They just come. And this was just something that popped into my head at a stoplight. And then I went home and I wrote some poems because I thought, gosh, when my mother passed away, everything passed away. Like the whole world between her, she and I had this whole language between us. She and my sister had a different, like a whole world shattered. And then I started writing, one thing died, then another thing died. I was thinking everything has died in some different ways. And that was based on the obituary, the shape, which didn't take the shape until later, but it was a way to start writing poems for my mother or to my mother. So I would say like, the bees died on, and that little prompt of following the obituary form helped me start to write and sort of start thinking about grief and instead of ignoring it. It was so therapeutic when I was writing it. In fact, I was crying a lot when I was writing it, and I felt that was really healthy because I hadn't really kind of acknowledged the feelings that I was having. And I'm still sort of writing about grief and things because my father just passed away, recently. And so I think writing can be extremely helpful. And for someone like me who doesn't go to therapy and doesn't like to share information about myself or how I'm feeling, poetry has been the one place that I feel like I'm actually able to share. I can't share anywhere else, but I'm really comfortable sharing in poetry. I was shocked that the book received the attention that it did. I'm, like not aspiring toward anything with like those things don't mean anything to me. If you give me something, I'll accept it graciously. But I don't aspire for things like that. Like I aspire to put the best five words together in the order that I possibly can. Like I'm really focused on the writing and trying to make the writing interesting and new and fresh for me. And I have to satisfy myself first. And so I'm not sitting around hoping I win this or hoping, and I never again, going back to when I first started, I mean, look at me. There was nobody that was writing poetry and publishing it at the time that I was starting. I could name like two poets, and there were more, but not a lot. And so I definitely think it was shocking to win all those awards. And actually, it was hard because I don't like people to look at me or to give me attention. I'm much better not on stage without lights. And it's not that I'm like super shy or anything, but I don't really feel comfortable with that kind of attention. But I accepted it graciously. And it was all online because it was during the pandemic. So I didn't have to get on a single stage, which was actually a blessing. And all the award ceremonies were on Zoom. And actually, I felt like, oh, I think this was sort of meant to be. But I'm still shocked at the reception that that book and any of my writing might have on anyone. Like sometimes people come up to me, they say the most unbelievable things to me, and I get the most unbelievable emails and notes and letters and things, and people cry to me. It's just really shocking to me that language can have that kind of power. So I don't think of it as like, oh, I'm so great, or it's like to me, it's shocking and amazing and a reaffirmation of the power of words and the power of art, any art, to transform and to connect with other people. Agnes Martin wrote and also painted and made things. And so I had read her writings first and kind of just like lightly looked at her visual art many, 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 many years ago. But I didn't really connect with the visual art as much at that time, but I really liked the writings. And then it wasn't until the MoMA in New York asked me to write a poem on anything in their entire collection of visual art online that I, was dutiful and started looking online and searching and looking around. It just was too overwhelming. So then I went backwards and I thought, hey, like what artist feels like I want to learn more about? And so I thought of Agnes Martin. And then lo and behold, they had some pieces there in the online collection that I was able to write a poem on. So I wrote a poem, and then at some point I stopped, but then I read that poem aloud at a writing conference, and I sat down and I thought, you know what, given all the difficulties that I'm dealing with right now, her work really resonates with me in ways that it just didn't when I was younger. And so I just wrote another poem, and then I wrote another poem, and then I started ordering everything I could for her books and doing as much research as possible. And then that's how this book came about. One of her favorite pieces of mine that I enjoy the most is called Friendship. And it's the last poem in the book. It's called Friendship 1963. I also really love Nightsea 1963, which are both pieces that I've seen in person subsequently, or around the time that I was writing them. And so I've luckily kind of just run into some of her pieces at small museums too. And then I have plates, really, really beautiful plates in the books that I ordered and then you can look at them online. But I just think her work really resonated with me because I was feeling really depressed during this time period where my father was sort of on his last leg. Didn't know it at the time, but I sort of maybe intuitively knew it. And then I was also dealing with a lot of other stuff. And so her work just at that moment felt really appropriate for some of the feelings that I was having. With My Back to the World, 1997. This year, I turned my back to the world. I let language face the front. The parting felt like a death. The first person ran away like a horse. When the first person left, there was no second or third person as I had originally thought. All that remained was repetition and blue things. This year, I stopped shaking the rain off of umbrellas and nothing bad happened. The terror of this year was emptiness, but I learned that it's possible for a sentence to have no words, that the meaning of a word can exist without the word, that life can still occur without a mind, that emptiness still swarms without the world, that it can be disconnected from the wall and still light up. The best thing about emptiness is if you close your eyes in a field, you'll open your eyes in a field.